Good morning. Hey, everybody. Today we're going to talk about storytelling tips for interviews, content creation, TEDx talks, and even how to be more inclusive for diversity, equity, inclusion. So I just want to start the conversation and welcome everybody. We'll try to get more people in the room to be part of the conversation. But in the meantime, just want to say good morning to Indra and Melanie. Indra, how are you doing? How was your weekend?
Hey, good morning, Bobby, Melanie. My weekend was great. It's nice and sunny in California. So thank you so much. It was a wonderful time to spend time in my garden and hope you had a wonderful weekend. And what did you
Well,
get
you
up
love
to?
your garden. What are you growing in the garden? Is it just plants or are there? Sorry, is it not plants? Is it food too, or what's in there?
Okay, there's sort of there is a bit of everything. I mean, there's a lot of succulents and dragon fruit and cactus. There's also this beautiful herb area that's right next to like the back door of my house. I'm also growing like healthy things. Like I'm growing turmeric, garlic. I'm growing radish. I'm growing kale, or like just all sorts of different things in my garden.
Wow. Okay. Great. That's awesome. Well, I mean, my father is a garden. He has a green thumb, so he likes the gardens. Me personally, I'm not really into gardening, but I love when people get into it. So it's very relaxing for them. I find cooking very relaxing, so that's kind of me. Um, my weekend was fine. I mean, it's the first full weekend where we're fasting, so getting into routine with the kids on that is and getting enough sleep, I think, is the big challenge. But I think we're doing some good work there. Melanie, how are you? How was your weekend?
Yeah, my weekend was good. I had met up with my best friend, and we went and had yoga with another friend of ours it was her birthday. It was rainy all Saturday. It was kind of cold and rainy. The sun's finally coming out, of course, on a Monday, but I think we got all that rain, Indra, from California on Saturday. So. But yeah, no, I had yoga on Saturday, which was fun and very relaxing and very good. And um, yeah, just did some work around the house and yeah, it
When
was overall
when you
no
do yoga, is
complaints.
it hot yoga or just regular yoga?
This one wasn't hot yoga. This was
Oh,
just
okay.
regular
I like doing
yoga.
hot yoga
Yeah.
because because half the time I can't do the things, so when I'm sitting around doing nothing, I still feel like it's hot and I'm sweating and my heart rate's up. So I don't feel like not useful. I feel useful.
Yeah, she's well, our friend is actually an instructor and she goes with us to Honduras, and she's a really good instructor. Like literally she'll be like, she's very inclusive of everybody. So she really encourages people to, like, I mean, she'll even do, like, you can stand there and just visualize yourself doing it if you don't feel like, do what you can, do what feels right for your body. So she just really encourages just the movement
Hmm.
of it. So, which is a very good
Awesome.
practice when especially when you're doing yoga.
Awesome.
So,
Okay, well, so today's topic is about storytelling and giving you tips because I think that, storytelling helps us for lots of things. The main reason did actually is the last thing, the DEI piece, diversity, equity, inclusion, because people out there who are marginalized or oppressed or people who need to be included or being excluded for various reasons, getting their stories out there and helping them storytell better to create more relatability, to empower them, to encourage other people to understand where people are going through, what they're going through. To me, is a very very important piece of what I want to help people with. And then, of course, I know that storytelling will help with TED Talks because every single TED Talk that's really really good out there has a powerful story that's aligned with it. And I've done 5 TEDx talks, so I've seen that with all the stuff that I've done. And obviously, storytelling works with your content, which is similar to what we talk. Content, whether you're doing video content, whether you're putting content on Twitter or Instagram or LinkedIn or TikTok, and then of course for interviews, if you want to have a good interview, obviously being able to tell a good story around the questions they ask is really what this is about. So that's what today's topic is all about, and we want to help as many people as we can. So if you like this conversation, feel free to retweet the tweet that's in the nest above there, and you can also come up on stage, ask a question, maybe share your story a little bit and tell me a little bit what you're doing, what you're working on, and anything we can do to help you with that. So that's kind of how we're going to do today. And with that, I'm going to start pinging a few more people to join the room. I'll start DMing folks. You can also answer questions or ask questions via the bubble there on the bottom right there in the conversation piece. And while I'm doing that, I'm going to ask Indra and then Melanie to introduce themselves to the audience.
Thanks so much, Bobby. So, hello everyone. I'm Indra Bartona. I'm a producer in the film and television industry, a TV host, and also the founder of the Positivity Vibe Tribe, a global community. The global community is here on Twitter, and we have over 8,000 members now. So, love you guys to join us. And there's a link on my profile page if you'd like to be part of that. We host 2 spaces a week, Wednesdays at 12 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, and of course on Thursdays at, actually, it's a new time for us. It's actually at 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. And we talk about all topics regarding positive lifestyle, gratitude, motivation, believing in yourself. I mean, just so many different wonderful topics. Attract your tribe. So, love to see you guys there. And I'm just excited to get into this discussion with Bobby and Melanie, because storytelling is truly a way that we can share with our audiences. And it's really a deep way to also teach lessons as well. So, over to you, Melanie.
Thank you. And hi, everyone. Welcome. And my name is Melanie Mitchell Wexler. I am a career coach, a job search expert, and a LinkedIn strategist. And I work with professionals throughout I can almost officially say globally, because I have a potential client that's going to be in Croatia. So expanding, I suppose. But I do work with professionals and helping them land their dream jobs and navigate the job market, and understanding how to get hired, how to work with recruiters and hiring managers as a former recruiter myself. So super excited about this topic because storytelling is such a pivotal part of not just, I mean, it's a pivotal part of our everyday process. And so, from whether you own a business or looking for a job or giving a speech, being able to tell your story, I think, is so important, and being able to have your voice heard. So, excited to talk about this today.
Thanks, Melanie. And for everyone here who's listening to me, my name is Bobby Omar. I am a professional speaker by trade. For the last 17 years, I've traveled around the world and delivered over 1,000 keynotes and workshops across 4 continents. I'm also a 5-time TEDx speaker, although I've also rejected 3 other TEDx talks. But TEDx talks are a big part of what I do. And what I do with my work is really, I'm a content creator, and I help people get clarity in their brand, help them build a thought leadership brand, which allows them to get more speaking gigs, more TED Talks, more book deals, more media opportunities, elevate their career, get more job opportunities, get more digital clients, and build more revenue. That's kind of what I focus on. And, storytelling is a big part of what I do in terms of as a professional speaker, as a content creator, helping people with their digital content, whether it's video content or even just text-based content, helping people tell stories to communicate who they are, to share their values, and to resonate with an audience is a big part of what I like to talk about, because every single one of you has a story. In fact, we all have many stories. We have our overall life story legacy, but then we have little stories about things we've been through, things that have challenged us, things that we've learned from. And so by being able to tell those stories, you're going to be able to get people to understand you, your brand, your cause, your value, the issues you care about. And that's really why storytelling is so important. And for me, I want to help. I realize that storytelling helps in all areas, whether it's interviews, content, getting a TED talk, helping with diversity, equity, inclusion. Because for me, that's a big part of it. So that's kind of why I'm here, and that's why this topic is so meaningful to me. If you like this topic, we encourage you to please retweet the tweet in the nest up above, or you can click the arrow on top and you can ping some of your friends in DMs to come join our room, or you can just actually take this page and share it with Twitter. You can even tag me and Melanie or Indra, and if you do that, then I'll retweet to my 500,000 followers. And next thing you know, you'll get more followers and more people come into the room. So that's kind of what we're doing. So that's a win-win. The first thing I want to talk about is why storytelling is so much better than other forms of content. I mean, the science shows that storytelling has a way to create greater accuracy of memory, so people remember more what you said when you tell in a story format. Even if you're talking about complicated data or complicated, tech issues, if you tell in a story format, people are more likely to remember stuff. So there's greater accuracy, there's greater memorability, and of course, the other thing is it creates a greater connection with people. There's studies done by Brené Brown that talks about being vulnerable, and vulnerable storytelling also is a great way to connect deeper with people so that there's more familiarity, there's more awareness, and even more so, there's more trust. And so when I did my first TEDx talk, which is about the power of connection, I talked about her research and how vulnerability and storytelling combined can be really amazing. In fact, whenever I do vulnerable storytelling on Twitter or LinkedIn or even Facebook, I get far greater results and reach with the content, because I think people get it and they're saying, yeah, you know what, I've been there too. I feel you. Like people understand that whole struggle, that hero's journey that we all go through as we're trying to, share what's going on in our lives. And so for me, that's why storytelling, I first started doing it actually in interviews. Like I remember, I was always a really good interviewer. It was hard to get the interview per se, Melanie, and since I know you're a recruiter, it was hard for me to get interviews. But once I got it, I almost always got the job because I was very good at telling the stories, and I'd have the whole, situation, action, and the results from that, and I would tell them the story about different things, and I'd be willing to tell stories that were not just work related but personal. So like whenever they would say, "Well, tell us what your biggest challenge was," and I said my biggest challenge was getting my parents to agree to let me marry my white wife, is what I said, and they're like, "What?" And I'll explain the story, and they're like, "Whoa, that's crazy!" And but they liked the story because it was very relatable. They knew someone else who'd been in a cross cultural relationship, and they understood the challenges of parents who have different values than you, and they thought they're like, that was a really great answer to that question. And so for me, I started doing them in interviews, and I realized that's where I started to set myself apart as someone who's a storyteller. And I'll stop there, I'll go to Indra and Melanie to give their takes on why they think storytelling is so important. Indra, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, Bobby. So I think um, storytelling is really important. And oh, hey, I want to give a shout out to our partners, the Positivity Vibe Tribe partners, Bunsen and Beaker, the dog account here in the space. And they have wonderful spaces on Tuesdays and Saturdays. Science chat on Tuesdays, and Saturday is all about pets. So thank you so much for supporting and joining us. I think the thing that excites me about storytelling is it personalizes and humanizes us on so many different levels. And so as soon as somebody starts to tell a story, it's like my whole being sort of, they have my attention because they're starting to share something about themselves. And I always feel like, okay, I automatically think, what can I learn when somebody starts to share? Um, and so it's a really big learning thing, but it's also personalizing. And people often have to, sometimes with some stories, they actually have to reveal some personal things about themselves. And so it's always really interesting, and it does really humanize a person when they start to share a story, and I feel like you can connect with them on deeper levels through storytelling. So that's just a couple of things that I really just love about storytelling. Over to you, Melanie.
Yeah, I mean, I think that Bobby, your example is perfect in terms of, even storytelling in an interview, because that's really what, recruiters, hiring managers, they like to be able to have something that's actually relatable to. And also it just kind of shows like, wow, if you're able to overcome that, what else could you probably, like the problems we have are probably pretty simple to get to overcome from that standpoint, and transversing, you know, and being able to communicate and overcome issues and problems. So I think it's just so important to be able to share your experiences in the form of a story and engage audiences. But I think that's also just important for, it's a way for your voice to be heard, for you to be able to share. I'm probably a better storyteller via written than I am verbal, which is something I, continuously trying to work on personally myself. But I love storytelling from the standpoint of being able, from a written perspective. I mean, it was something early on as a kid. I don't do as much reading now as an adult, but as a kid, I loved to read. I loved a good story. And so I think that goes back to, if you think about the story that, sets in your mind, and when somebody even tells that to you through speech, or, however, through a video or whatever form, then, in being able to touch you, in your heart, in your mind, in your soul, I think that's, you've really made an impact on somebody. So it really just comes on all levels. So, from that perspective, and you think about where that shows up in your life, whether it's your personal or professional.
Yeah, thanks, Melanie. And I think that part of the reason we're having the conversation because we want to give you as many tips and insights as possible to help you become better storytellers. But if you also want to come on stage and ask a question about, where, how you're sharing a story, or maybe tell us, what your story is briefly, or you can ask questions about how you tell your story with video content, or how do you do it on Twitter, how do you do it on LinkedIn. There's different ways in which we can, you know, help folks. So that's another reason why we're here. We do have one person who's come up on stage. Mohammed, go ahead with your question or comment. You can unmic and go ahead and speak. Okay, maybe he's not at his thing. Okay, well, whenever you are ready to speak, make sure you put your hand up, and then we'll know that you're ready to speak. Everyone else, you're welcome to put your hands up too and come on stage. We'd love to hear from you. We'd love to have more people in this room, so that's why I'm doing that. Um, let me let me let me actually ask the panel, Melanie and Indra. So when it comes to storytelling, what do you think are some of the challenges people have when it comes to storytelling effectively? I'd like to hear your thoughts on that.
Well, I think the first thing is, and I'm going to reflect what it was for me, is that I thought, oh, nobody will be interested in this story. Why would they want to hear it? Or just doubting if what you're going to share would be interesting for others. The thing is that we underestimate our own stories and our own experiences because people can learn so many things from that. They're going to take different pieces of value from what you share, depending on what they're going through. Everybody's so unique. I mean, even in this space, we have so many different people from different places in the world, different parts of the world, different ages. Um, you know, just coming from a totally different perspective. So I always think that, be generous with your stories and be thoughtful in presenting them, because I actually used to think, oh, look, nobody will want to hear this. But actually, a lot of people want to hear your story. Because your story is always going to be unique and different, and it can help somebody and it can support somebody on their journey. Our stories can also inspire a lot of people. And so I feel like it's really important to share it. Even if you have self doubt about your story, put it out there and see what the feedback is. And I feel like we have nothing to lose, but everything to gain from that.
I just want to quickly comment on the mindset piece. Yeah, I think that a lot of people think that who would want to hear my story, or who would be interested in my story, who would care about my story. But the truth is, every single one of you has a certain aspect of your story or of your life that is going to be of interest to somebody, that may inspire someone. I think that that's a great point. And you know, we have thousands of stories in each of our lives, like that. Like the story of the time you know, uh, when I was a 6-year-old kid and I got a car accident. That's a story. And what's the learning? I don't know. Maybe Bobby rode a bike terribly, but or watch where you're going. But I mean, the point is, we all have so many stories, and a lot of people, don't feel weird about sharing them. Melanie, what are your thoughts on this?
I think the biggest, or maybe this is my own personal challenge, is really getting all of my thoughts down and like, okay, what do you share? What do you not share? Being able to really properly express it in a way that you still engage your audience. I clearly like overthink this very in depthly. And so, but yeah, I think, being able to like really figure out, and maybe that is kind of tied to what Indra said too, like, oh, is that even something somebody would care about? Do I need to share that piece? Or, just really understanding like, okay, what needs to be included in it, what don't I need to include, but also not making it so drawn out and where you would lose somebody's attention. So i think that's I think that's a big challenge for people. It's like, where do you start, and then if you have a story idea, how do you actually break that down into creating it in a way that engages people?
Yeah, I think you make a
That
great point that people get thrown off by just starting because there are so many different ways in which to start. So it's like imagine 10 different roads in front of you to get started on your storytelling journey, and you're like, well, which path do I take? I don't know. And then you kind of get stuck, and just you don't move. And so I think that's another thing that holds people back. I think that's a great point. I saw that MB put his hand up. So if you want to ask a question or share a thought, please go ahead.
Okay, thank you so much. Thank you so much, Bobby, Melanie, and every other person that has shared opinions. My name is Muhammad Bukaromara from Nigeria, and I'm a curator for TEDx, TEDx Shehuri, which is a independently organized TEDx event here in Nigeria, virtually the first in the region. And we work with young people, bringing together young people to organize TED Talk and discuss about ideas, what's spreading in the local community, as well as share some of the breakthroughs in science and research from that particular community. And I'm just super excited to hear some of the tips you've been sharing with other speakers. Are very, very valuable tips and very, very helpful, especially for myself that work majorly with young people that are looking for opportunities, to improve their capacity in leadership. And I think storytelling is something that you cannot overemphasize its importance for leadership today in today's world, because virtually everything is about storytelling. When you want to really make the impact that you want to make, you have to tell your stories. And basically, the question I want to ask, which I think it's something that would have a lot of conversations, is how people craft a narrative and story. Because for any given circumstance or given for any one story, you have these different narratives you can tell about that particular story. For instance, a story that may be told in a way to trigger empathy can also be told in a way to trigger action, or can also be told, that same story can also be told in a way that triggers different and many other reaction from the people, from the audience. So how do you craft this narrative based on the context, or based on the incident, or based on the situation you find yourself, to tell the stories and deliver effectively the message that you want to deliver?
That's an excellent question. And what I would say to that is, you know, that's why storytelling there's so many different frameworks out there that help us to craft really, really good stories. So the framework in which you share your story has significant effect on the impact of how your story will actually get out there. So the framework is an important piece. The second piece, of course, is knowing your audience in terms of who they are, what they think about, and what they care about. Because in the framework of the story, you're going to be saying things like, okay, let me share some background of the situation. Let me then connect with you on an emotional level based on the feelings of what's going on. Let me immerse you in the story based on the auditory, the visual, the kinetic aspects of the story. Let me convince you in the story of what's going on based on the data, the evidence, the case studies, right? And then in terms of, once they've empathized or they understand what's going on, okay, now then what's the call to action? What do we do to inspire them and call them to act and take up the catalyst to keep moving? And so some of the best stories out there are doing all those things, right? They're immersing them in the story, they're connecting on a human level, they're sharing data, case studies, and evidence that convinces people of the need for that, of the cause or the idea, and then they have a really powerful call to action. And for me, that's the general way in which I would craft a story, particularly a TED talk. If I did a TED talk, that's what I would do. Like my last TEDx talk was it was called it was all about 20-second hugs, and I tried to explain to people why 20-second hugs were so important, and I went through the whole history and the data, and I shared some emotional aspects of it regarding 20-second hugs, and then I said, here's my idea, and here's why I want you to move forward with it. So I think for me, that's probably the main thing I would do, that there's a way to immerse the audience, but it takes a lot of different elements to do that. And that's why I think frameworks are so important. There's lots of frameworks out there, like the most famous, one of the most famous one is the Hero's Journey framework. That's you can just Google that. You can see what that looks like. But there's lots of other frameworks as well. Like there's one for interviews, the situation, action, result. One is another one as well. Indra, Melanie, any thoughts on his question?
Oh, okay. I was giving you a moment, Melanie, in case you wanted to jump in. Okay, so I always think that storytelling is it's for me. I like to know who the audience is a little bit. If it's going to be particularly, and you mentioned children, I think growing up, stories were the most fascinating thing to me. And even as a teenager, that's when I really, when I was around 12 years of age, I really started to be like just such a bookworm and read all those self-improvement, self-growth books, and it was really fascinating. So I had that natural curiosity, and I noticed that a lot of my friends around me also had that natural curiosity to read books, to find more information. So stories, as I would be reading a book, were the part that really got my attention. And I think that's where also when we're when we're sharing a story, I think we should always have like a really basic kind of structure. And this is something that I do as well, and it also comes through in anything that I do as a creative project, whether it's for TV, whether it's a film, whatever the project is, or even a short video even, is to have a beginning, a middle, and an end, and just have that structure in there, and that really helps people to absorb the material, to understand where you're going with the story, and also to kind of I guess emphasize what the points are, and the subject matter of the story, and particularly I think with talking about um, youth and teenagers, they like to have some sort of structure, and their awareness of structure is incredible. I think even more so than us as adults. So I hope that's helpful.
Melanie, any thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I absolutely kind of agree. I agree with Indra in terms of like knowing who your audience is and being able to understand what's going to potentially resonate with them, and picking and really kind of focusing in on that. I think that's really um, that's the most important thing. And so I even thinking about whether again you are a you're talking to a potential client or you're talking to a large audience, understanding what, whether it's a pain point that they want to, that you need to hit home on, or, a particular area. So I think understanding your audience is the biggest, for me, is one of the biggest things. What's so important? What is most important to them?
Yeah, no, that's great. Thanks so much for that, and thanks to MB for the question. I wanted to go back to, we were talking about the challenges that people had with storytelling, and Andrew and Melanie gave them their thoughts, but I didn't actually give my thoughts. And what I would say is that and they covered two really good things, which is that people don't know whether their story is worth something, and people don't know where to start. Um, I would say that I think those are both very very important pieces when it comes to storytelling, or the challenge that people have. Um, Other challenges that people might have is when it comes to their story. I've seen a lot of people tell stories, but not in an effective way. So there are people out there who are sharing stories, or at least trying to share stories about their cause or their interest or the thing that they're talking about, but it's not as effective as it could be. And there's different things you do. Like there's different tactics that you can use to make your stories more effective. So, for example, imagine a story that doesn't is kind of wandering all over the place, not very focused, and it's going all over the place, and so they start to lose people when they tell their story. That's a very common, and that's probably one of the most common examples where you meet someone at some event or a party and they start telling a story and they go on and on and on. And you're like, oh my God, when is the story going to end? Or what's the point of the story? And they lose you. I've seen some of my former clients that I've worked with to try to help them out. They do like these videos, and the videos go on and on. I'm like, oh my gosh, and they want feedback. And I'm like, okay, I think you should redo the video and cut it by like 80%. Like, what's the main point? What are you trying to get home? And I'll even share my own personal story, which is when I worked on I was working with a professional videographer and director on crafting my own personal branded life story of who I am and what I'm all about, because I wanted to put that on my website and put it on all my channels. And I had scripted out this really, really powerful story in writing, which I thought was going to be great. And then after we recorded it, the overall video was 8.5 minutes long. And she was like, Bobby, this is too long. I'm like, but no, but I scripted it. It's exactly word for word what I want to say. This is my story. This is me. You can't cut it. She's like, well, let me, it's too long. It's got to be short. It's going to be 3 to 5 minutes. Let me just try to edit this. And I was like, oh, okay, fine. And I was like, oh man, like I thought I had scripted it so well. Um, and sometimes, a written story is different than a video story. So the written story, even if it was an 8.5 minute read, is probably fine than the shorter video. So she came back with a shorter video and presented to me. It was 3.5 minutes long. And I got to tell you, I was amazed at how she did. I was like, how did you do that? Like, you took everything that I said and really captured it in 3.5 minutes. And I think this is amazing. And it's very emotional. I get it. And that video I still use. It's the main video on my YouTube channel. It's the main video on my website. It's the main video on my LinkedIn profile. I love that video. And it's like 7 years old now, but it's still who I am and what I talk about. So, we can learn to be better. And I think a lot of people with their storytelling tactics, some people, they don't put any emotion or heart into their stories, right? They miss out on that tactics. I often tell a lot of my clients, okay, your story's fine. Now, where's the heart? And they're like, well, how do I put in the heart? I said, well, you know, it's very easy to look at a line and then say, okay, you say this line, but tell me how it felt, right? So, for example, you might say something like, and I'm not to make Bunsen upset or anything, but my dog passed away. Okay, uh, how did that make you feel, right? I got injured. How did that make you feel? I missed out on a job promotion. How did that make you feel? Share with us the emotion of what you're feeling, what you're going through. Or if it's about somebody else, share the emotion, what that person is feeling, what they're going through. That's where you get to the heart. That's where you get to the vulnerability. That's where you get to the resonant and relatability with people, by sharing those emotions. So I would say one of the challenges with storytelling is that a lot of people don't employ they don't do them effectively, or they don't employ the proper tactics when it comes to really good storytelling. And that's kind of where it affects your interviews. That's where it affects your content, because I see content that is all over the place, and I see interviews where, yeah, they talk at great length but not very concise. It's not focused, not concise, it's not relevant. Being all those things will help you get better when it comes to storytelling. So yeah, Melanie, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just there's something you said about like when you were going through that editing process, and it just resonated with me in terms of because even for me, when I work with my clients, the resume is the resume tells a story. Your LinkedIn profile tells us, your about section can tell a story. Your whole profile can. And it's funny because sometimes I get clients that just are like, they cling to a certain experience or they cling to a certain situation. And the truth is, the relevance of it is not that important, but they cling to it so hard that they won't let go of it. And I think when you think about telling your story, again, kind of going back to the audience, sometimes you have to let go. Like, it can still be important to you. Like, it's still the importance never dies to you, but you have to remember, what is the importance? What is the audience member going to walk away? Or what is your target on? What do you want them to walk away? So you have to be open and receptive to being able to edit and crafting your story in a way that resonates with your audience. Because yes, it's still it's in this case, in some of these cases, it's not about us. If you're looking for an end result, it's not about us. It's about who you're speaking to. So that because I go through that a lot with my clients. Like they'll cling to something like this was early on in their career, it was the most life-changing thing, and I'm like, that's great, but we don't have a place for it. Like, like we can find a place, but it won't make sense if we add it here. And so I think that's also something too, that you need to be very open to understanding of the editing process and, the crafting part of the process.
Yeah, thanks for that, Melanie. And I see a lot of really great people in the audience that I know, and I particularly want to shout out to Kareem Assad, who's in the audience, because I know that one of the reasons why this storytelling topic has been that came up with this morning was because she and I are doing an event on Thursday in Toronto, a Toronto LinkedIn local meetup, and storytelling is going to be a big piece of it, which is really because of the story of she's been very vocal out there and telling lots of stories about different things, and I support her on that. But we're going to tell a story about how cancel culture has negatively impacted us. And the short story there is, I was running an event that was political and social activist based, but because of a couple of Twitter trolls, it got canceled because the two political leaders that were in the event, they got really scared and said, too much heat. Maybe we should do this later. And I was like, okay, fine. So they backed down. We canceled it. But then Karima said, why don't we talk about cancel culture? And I said, okay, sure, let's do that. And I said, sure. So we ran this event, and so it's been going on. I'll put it in the nest above, but the event's happening. If you're in Toronto, you can come to it. We're going to do a panel event and invite people to share their thoughts, share their stories, and talk about what happened. But another quick short story was just last week on Thursday, I got an email from Eventbrite, which is the event site that was I'm hosting the event on, and they had unpublished the event because they said they got some message from people saying that Krima wasn't going to be there, and I don't know what else they said, but I'm like, what, people just made up stuff about our event, and they tried to get it canceled. And so I wrote back saying, no, Krima's coming, and I'm going to be there, and here's my business. We've run 20 of these events the last 4 years. Here's our links. Like, please set this up again. And so within 24 hours, they published it again. But it certainly goes to show like the power of cancel culture by some small individuals who can cause a lot of ruckus. Now, obviously, some people need to be canceled, and I totally get that. And we actually talked about that last week in our session. So, but it was just interesting to see how that went down. So, Kareem, if you want to come up and share a story too, or maybe it's a good way for me to segue into DEI, because I think storytelling is a very important tool and something that for diversity, equity, inclusion, and for marginalized people, for oppressed people, for those who, need to have their voice heard and to build awareness around that, it is incredibly important to tell the story, tell many stories, have those stories shared. And so if I can do anything I can to help with them and answer questions about that, this is why I'm here. I want to make sure that people will be able to create those stories, because the more we tell those stories, the more we create greater inclusion and a sense of belonging and community for those who are feeling alone or feeling marginalized. And that's why I think that's so important. But with that, I see Bunsen has come up on stage, probably to reprimand me for my sad dog story, but I hope I'm okay with that. Bunsen, go ahead. Share your question or comment.
Yeah, I've been listening while I've been working on some school stuff. I'm at my day job now, and it's totally fine to talk about things that are sad. That's part of storytelling. And I think having spaces like that and giving people ideas and motivation to tell your own story is really important. We've found that with the long tweets on Twitter, because we have Twitter Blue, it's allowed us to tell those long stories. And you're right, like you can tell a story and it can be very clinical, it can be very impersonal, but it's the heart of the story is what engages people and gets people to keep reading. And 100% it's the emotion, it's how you are feeling. I'm writing one right now that we're going to post, I don't know, Tuesday or Wednesday, about how much our Bernese Mountain Dog loves the winter. Right? Like we live in Alberta, Canada, and it's cold and it's gross. And until this dog came along, my family, we would hide from the winter. Like when it was cold, we just bundle up and sit by the fire and watch a movie or something like that. But this dog he lives for the winter. It's like what he was built for. It's his thing. And I'm just getting those emotions uh, out on a doc about just how differently I see the winter now because of this amazing dog. And that's the heart of the story. And that's just such great advice. And that's my comment. Thank you.
Love that. Thanks so much for that. Appreciate it. Indra, Melanie, any thoughts on that?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much, Jason, for coming up and sharing. You always have great information to share with us all, and I'm constantly learning from you. And yes, anybody that knows Bunsen, he is just this. I would just say he's like a cuddle bear that loves moose legs. So you'll have to tune into their show to check it out, what I mean by that. Or if you're curious, check out their timeline for sure. But that I'm just going to drop that point, and there are so many stories about uh, moose legs on account of that, right? So there it is, the legend of the story. It lives on, which is my point. Okay, that certain things can that you share in a story can live on and take on a life of their own. Often that's the case in my creative projects that I've been involved in, and certainly for film and television, where and look, we all see that there is a season, a first season of something, and it continues on and on, and there's like 100 seasons, and the story never ends because it can always be something new to add. The Walking Dead, for example, but we've never had enough of the zombies, right? We can never have enough of those zombie stories. So yes, in storytelling, it's wonderful to share stories, and particularly when there is something that does take on a life of its own, when it becomes like an adventure, and we can also find within ourselves things that we can share with our audience that, okay, doesn't have to be this Bernese mountain dog, running around the snow, but it can be you going through different experiences and sharing your feelings, how it affected you, and it is your adventure, it's your life. So yeah, just my thoughts on that. Thanks, Bobby.
Yeah, no problem. Appreciate that. And again, if you like the conversation, we'd love to have more people in this room. So feel free to retweet the tweet in the nest about getting people in here. You can also click on the purple on the bottom right to ask questions. You can also come up on stage and share your own story or ask a question here. You can also click the little arrow button on top and DM folks to be part of this conversation. There will be a replay, of course, and so they'll get access to it. But I want to make sure people know about that. I also put in the chat in the nest above with the links the event that's happening this Thursday, the cancel culture, how to rise above cancel culture. That's the event's happening on Thursday. You can check that out. You can retweet it. We'd love to have your help in promoting that event. It's always we always appreciate that. I wanted to actually share another story, which is about how storytelling can help Actually, before I do that, I want to talk about what Bunsen mentioned regarding the tweets. So with longer tweets, you can tell longer stories. That's true. In fact, when Twitter went from 140 to 280 characters, I was like, you know what, this would be good because now you have more space to do other things. However, this still is a very short form content platform. And you can still do video stories and things like that. I've had great success with Twitter threads, to be honest, because what I like about Twitter threads is that within a 10-part thread, every single tweet has something that can attract people. And I do that on purpose so that if tweet number 8 attracts them, they'll read the whole thing. And next thing you know, I get more traction. And I'm able to create more virality around that. So some of the Twitter threads that I've done have been among my most viral tweets. I've had viral tweets before as well, but the Twitter threads really increase them as well, and it's also part of the culture in Twitter. So I think you can still use those if you're not using longer tweets, right? Because most people on this platform are reading tweets and they're going through really quick, short ones too. And so it's good to have short tweets. It's good to have longer tweets. It's good to have Twitter threads. But I'll share a little story, which is about content for these things. So content for with storytelling. So it's about my wife. She had left her job after 14 years and was let go, and it was a very toxic place. And she spent almost a year trying to get to work as an entrepreneur, and as a content creator and an editor and things like that. She's a great writer and editor. And I asked her to do a post in the new year. So do a post in the new year, talk about what's going on LinkedIn, and that'd be cool. And then she didn't do it. And then a year went by, and I was like, honey, please, for the love of Pete, you got to share your story. Like, tell people what's going on, because you need more clients, and business is going as well as it could. Like, let people know. I said, okay, fine, but I don't want to tell people that I suck and that I lost my job. I said, well, no, just tell them what happened, tell them how you feel, but don't say you suck, and don't tell them that the organization sucks. Just tell them how you felt. And so she wrote something, gave it to me, and I was like, you know what, honey, you are like the best writer I know, but I think this one could use a little work because I think it's a bit too salesy and promotey. And she's like, okay, fine. And so I helped her edit it in a way that she felt it was really, really good. And then we launched it. And it was an amazing story of her whole journey about, losing her job, feeling vulnerable and worthless, and trying to transition into something new, and the new clients that she's working with and where she's at. And then she's asking people for help, and if they're looking for someone, they can hire her. And has anyone been through the same thing before? And the story was amazing. And pretty soon it got shared by 350 people on LinkedIn. I've never had anyone share my post more than like 15 times. 350 people shared her post. There were like, I don't know, 9,000 likes. There was about 2,000 comments. It was unbelievable. And this post had 3.7 million impressions. Crazy, crazy amount. In fact, at this point, at that time, it was the more than anything I'd ever even come close with my own content, which is kind of funny. I was like, wow, that's crazy. It was such a good story. So, I think it's amazing how much a story can really resonate with people and really take off and build awareness, because she generated 1,000 new connections and followers, and hundreds of messages. And, that definitely helped with building her brand, building her business. So I just want to share that little story about how it can help with your content. I want to see if Indra or Melanie had any thoughts about content, or storytelling that improves or enhances your content.
Yes, I do have some thoughts. I also wanted to give a shout out to Rose, my journalist friend, and talking about stories. I also know that she writes poetry. So if you're able to speak, Rose, I know you could be busy, but we would love to hear from you on this topic of storytelling, because this is right in your wheelhouse. So would love you to come up if you're able to. Something also that we've also been kind of talking about, Bobby, is how storytelling can share like insights and perspectives about other people's cultures and religions, and their lifestyle and everything. And we've been sort of dancing around that. But I just said dancing is a cultural thing, but it really is important, because we have so many people from different parts of the world, and by sharing our stories and by them sharing their stories, we get to understand different cultures. And I think that's really powerful, because even though we are all human beings, I mean, although it may be questionable that there may be some aliens within us, but overall, as humans, we all want the same thing, right? At the end of the day, we all want to be happy, we want to be joyful, we want to have the basics, Maslow's hierarchy of needs basics. We want to feel loved, we want to have food in our bellies and a good night's sleep. And these really are just, the core basics that we all share, no matter where we are around the world. So I always think it's really inspiring to drink up some of the stories from other people that they share around the world, and their thoughts and perspectives could be totally different, but at the same time, the same. So back to you, Bobby.
And thanks for that. And Melanie is also a very prolific content creator, particularly on LinkedIn. You want to talk a bit about that in terms of how you're using storytelling with that?
Yeah, I mean, I usually use so I have my newsletter, The Pivot, and one of the things that I weave in there, I tell life stories in it, but I also, I share. One week I may share advice, like last week I shared free resources of how, if you're experiencing a layoff, you don't have the money, these are things you can do for your career. So I'll, do that. But then the week before, I shared my life lessons that I go to Honduras every year. I have a nonprofit dedicated to our mission trips for that with my best friend and my daughter. And so I shared like there's the life lessons that I've learned, just the very five simple life lessons, and I relate that back to just kind of life in general and what I've learned by going to this place that, if you looked at it on a map and it was like, it's in the southern part of Honduras. I spend a week in a very, there's a little city out, that we do visit, but then I'll spend the majority of the week in a little village. But it's actually the happiest place that I can, it's one of the happiest places that I can go to. And, despite the poverty and everything that's around me. So, so I will share those types of things and weave that into my content from different standpoints of not just, here I am as a career coach, but this is also a big part of my life. This is something I work year round. Sponsor, my family sponsors multiple children, and, I'm dedicated to it. So I think it's also important to share other aspects of who you are and things that are important to you that, maybe you don't necessarily, that's not your wheelhouse, so to speak, but or what people know of you. So, but it's also good to share what your insights are, because I think it's important too. One of the things that I shared in that particular newsletter is, I feel like it's my mission to share the story of what happens here, what's happening, because the people there don't necessarily have the ability or the voice to share it with a larger audience. And so that's one way I can help them, and I can help, give a better understanding of maybe what's happening in the world, or just maybe teach people gratitude and appreciation for what we have. So I think it's one thing to also not be afraid to share things like that. I've shared, I've lost both of my parents in 2019 and then 2020. And, my dad was a very big pivotal person in my life. He was my stepfather. He came in when I was 12 years old, which is not an easy age to take on a preteen daughter. But, that's one of the things that he played a very pivotal role. And he also taught me life lessons. So in the past, I've shared those things as well, in an honor and an homage to him and the lessons that he taught me. So, I think it's just important to be able to be vulnerable and to share that side as well, so that it's just another way for people to connect with you.
Yeah, thanks, Melanie. And for myself, I tell a lot of different stories about lots of things. I talk about politics, I talk about family, I talk about diversity, I talk about Star Trek, I talk about lots of different things. And I find that every single story that I tell attracts a new audience depending on what the topic is, and that's a way to actually diversify your multi-platform content strategy, which again leads to more opportunities, more thought leadership, and more business. So I'm really big on telling a story about anything, and finding the small stories that can get people to resonate with who I am and connect with me. We have a couple more people on stage, which is great. Rose, welcome to the stage. Please go ahead with your question or comment.
Hi. Hi, everyone. Thank you, Indra, for calling me out. I guess one of the questions I have is, how much do you share about yourself and what you're doing, and how much do you amplify the voices of others? And I was wondering, I'm wondering about this in that I was interviewed in the Global podcast by Simon Hotchkins, and I was looking at a way to amplify what I was saying in our conversation. And what I did this weekend was pull out one video clip where I'm talking about knowing yourself, and that the journey that was personal to me, and how that can inform other people. And then in another clip, and I mean, this is just showing you what I'm doing. I pulled out a video clip of I'm talking about what ChatGPT will mean to journalism. And so I've thought of two ways. One storytelling might be to talk about ChatGPT the way I see it and look at, what like Neiman Lab and at Harvard is saying how newspapers are already using it and have been using it for decades in a way, since everything is on the internet and you're using technology to tell your stories. And the other would be maybe a thread about myself and my journey. So, I think, and then, but a lot of the time, I'm interviewing people like Indra, who I've interviewed, and lots of people who tell me amazing stories. And part of my job as a journalist, I wrote profiles of three women at Intel, and my job was to tell their story in a way that resonated, that I thought would resonate. And I get the proof in the pudding is that most of my stories, on those profiles didn't have really any changes from Intel. And they let me tell the story of one woman who was in a boardroom and, what she was going to do. Was she going to say what she wanted to do in front of the CEO of Intel? So I'm always looking for those moments that you know, that are that tell the story of when a change happened or what initiated, this a pivot or inspiration for something. So my question would be, how much do you sort of, I guess, balance that need to tell other people's stories and your own story as you on social media?
Well, I mean, and that's a great question. I mean, everybody's going to have a different balance of that, right? I mean, there's there's some people out there who tell only stories about other people, right?
Hmm. Hmm.
That's what I do. Like
Yeah.
when I started my speaking career, my mentor, his name is Sanjay Nath, he would only tell stories about other people. And he told me, Bobby, I'm not really vulnerable with people, and I don't tell my personal life, but you are really good at that. You should tell your story and your challenges. And I think you do a really good job with that. Whereas I only do it, I talk about other people's stories and I do it in a very inspiring way. So I think, it's going to be different for each person. That said, I mean, in the beginning, obviously, when I'm trying to build up my profile and trying to get noticed with social media, digital content, whatever, I'm telling more stories, like more stories of myself or of other people that make the point that I'm trying to make to my target audience. Now that I
Hmm.
have 500,000 followers, now I'm able to use my influence to, retweet other people's stories and share their stuff, even as a means to just support them. I may not even, and I find it's a good place to be because I have that ability to easily retweet people's stories and share that knowledge with them. So, but the balance, I think I personally wouldn't worry so much about the balance. I think that you focus on your target audience, you think about what you're trying to do, you know where your heart is and where your values are and the things you care about, and then you can start sharing whatever you want to talk about. And from my standpoint, I think that that's kind of where I would go. And the other thing I would keep in mind too is that the other question comes up a lot is how far a story can go, like how vulnerable can you be, how much do you tell? And there are people out there I know, even on LinkedIn and Twitter, LinkedIn particularly, which you wouldn't expect, but there's people who talk about suicide all the time. There's people who talk about really dark.
Really? I haven't
This,
seen those.
yeah. I know this guy
I,
personally, and he talks about suicide
mm,
all the time. And it's very,
wow.
very
Mm,
raw, real stuff. Now, he attracts an audience that's okay with that and wants to be there and to engage in those discussions. Another one of my clients, she's a grief coach, so she talks about stories of grief and how people
mhm.
feel grief. So,
Yeah.
um, you have to be mindful of those because they're all going to attract their different audiences, and as long as you take responsibility for what you post about, that's okay. The challenge becomes when it's personal versus private. So I'll give you an example of that. So, I talk about my kids a lot. Do I give the address of my kid's school? No. Do I, say very specific things about what they're doing and where it is? No, because I'm protecting their privacy, right? I'll
Mm,
certainly tell a funny story about my daughter, something she had learned at school, but I wouldn't say where the school is. Another example was I got in an argument with somebody. He was on LinkedIn and he posted about his divorce and he just went and trashed his wife. And I said, this is completely inappropriate. Like, I understand you're going through something really, really crappy and shitty, but you don't want to bring people into that type of stuff. You're basically putting potential harm on her. What you should do instead is say, I'm going through a divorce. It's really hard. I'm feeling lonely. I really dislike this. It's tough. And you talk those emotions, but you don't bring in other people. And he was really big on, well, I'm free to do what I want. I mean, yeah, fine. Then you're free to talk about whatever you want, but you should take responsibility that people are going to chastise you and put you down for doing something that seems to be really inappropriate and unprofessional on the platform. So that's on you, bro. And that's kind of like that was the take I had. But so you have to be mindful of what's private versus what's personal in terms of going too far. And some people think that anything vulnerable is too far, and that's fine. They don't have to read my stuff. They don't have to. I've gotten hate mail from people like said, I can't believe that you shared that story about your weight loss and your diabetes and how you felt. Your body image was terrible, and I can't believe you did that. And I'm like, okay, sure, but you're the one sending me an anonymous email, like in this manner, and you're not my audience. So I just ignore it. Now that message really hurt me. It did. I was really
Hmm.
upset.
Yeah.
But I can't, especially because it
Well,
was.
I mean, it's somebody else, it's like somebody else's perspective. It's not you,
Yeah,
so it's outside of your sphere of, what you can do. And to you, this is helping people. Like, I think it's great what you were doing with that.
yeah,
Because it's everybody can relate to it, or most people can relate to it.
yeah. And I can even tell you another very specific story, which is, I share content on LinkedIn and Twitter and Facebook for years about my body image and weight loss journey, which has been really challenging. And I was at a wedding, and one of my family members, he's basically the son of a second cousin who I often see at some of our family, like our big once a year family gatherings, like for Eid and stuff. And he said, or at weddings, and he said, hey, hey, Bobby, uncle, can I talk to you? I'm like, sure. You haven't talked to me for like all your life, but okay, let's talk now. And he said, I just want to say that I saw your post on LinkedIn, and it was amazing, and I can't believe my uncle or someone I know in my family is talking about this on LinkedIn. And I've struggled with my weight. I've struggled with binge eating, and the way you talked about it really meant a lot to me. And so what's amazing is that there's 90% of people who never say anything. They're like the iceberg of content readers and consumers, and they never say anything. And he finally said something to me after years of seeing my content, and it was validation for knowing that what I'm talking about can reach people and it actually can work. Before I go to Admiral Awesome, which again I love your insignia and your avatar, and of course I love Star Trek because I'm a huge Star Trek fan. I watch all Star Trek and I'm watching Picard. It's amazing and I'm so happy. But anyway, I'm gonna go before I get to you. I'm gonna go to Melanie and Indra because I want to see if they wanted to answer the question that Rose was talking about.
Yes, and I also thank you so much, Rose, for coming up. I also want to welcome some other friends in the space. We have Michael that's joined us. I see Arnaldo down there. Thank you so much for joining us, and everybody else that's joined us in the space. Don't forget about the chat, which is on the right-hand bottom corner. If you have some questions or you'd like to share something, go ahead. And also, Success Minded has joined us. Now, we host the Thursday space in the Positivity Vibe Tribe together, and he is a wonderful storyteller, just a natural in telling authentic stories. So if you're able to speak, love you to come up, and if you're not, then I totally understand. What Rose was sharing was I find that most of the stories that also I want to talk about Rose shares are really powerful because she is talking about and highlighting a lot of with her brand Women to Follow, and I've had the honor and the privilege to be interviewed by her and be part of some of her wonderful events, and she is very good at also when she is sharing something about others, and also it's probably because of her profession, being a professional journalist, but she does a lot of research. And I also want to just kind of emphasize this point about, being able to do research on the topic, on even on your own story. It also adds a foundation as well. I found if you're going to share something, find out some statistics on it, find out some background on it, go a little bit deeper. And so there you go, Rose. You inspired me on so many levels to prepare what I'm going to be talking about at a whole new level. Back
Thank you
over
so
to
much. Thank you so
you.
much. I
Of
know I
course.
did when I asked you to speak at the Women to Follow Summit. You said, "Well, I want to know some of the questions because I want to prepare." And not many people said that to me, so that's great. I'm glad
Thank you.
that's inspiring you. a little bit.
Thank,
Thank you.
thank you.
All right, let's keep going because I want to make sure there's a lot of people coming on stage now, which is lovely. But we want to make sure we have time for everybody because normally we go for an hour and a little bit, and so we're a little bit over an hour now. But let's go to Admiral Awesome. I'd love to hear from you.
Hey, everyone. How are you? By the way, you can all call me by my real name, which is John. I just,
Thanks, John.
nice to meet you. Big Trekkie, obviously. So I hope I can add something here. I'm relatively new to using my voice and as part of storytelling in my job because I just made a career change about a year and a half ago. But as I grow and learn, I'm discovering that one of the things that works really well for me is just to actually give you a little context of what I do. I work with individuals who are looking for work. I'm in Hamilton, by the way. You said you're Toronto, so greetings from Hamilton. What I do is I work with people who are looking for.
Go Hammer.
Right. But I have all these people that are looking for jobs, and my role is to basically go out and try to unlock opportunities for them and stuff. And I work with people with disabilities and people that don't have disabilities. I see all walks of life over here. And one of the things that I find that works really, really well for me is sometimes when I have an audience, could be an audience of one or more, and this is just my comfort level. I like to share personal experiences with people that I work with, right? And just give you an example, I'm obviously I don't really share too much. You know what I mean? I have to keep some things private. But I had a gentleman last year he's my age, and he was basically trying to make a career change for about a year prior, and things weren't going his way. And he felt pretty down, and I started sharing a little bit of a story with him. And at the end of the story, it was basically a story about somebody who had encountered some unexpected things in their career and decided to completely make a change. And I remember him saying to me, well, I'm too old to do this, right? And I said, well, funny, because I'm the person I'm talking about who made the change, and you and I are the same age, right? So I think that sometimes sharing a story or something that you that's happened to you or somebody obviously you can't share too many details, really is powerful for me. I feel like whenever I've had a situation like that where I've been able to share a personal experience, whether it's me or somebody I know, it really unlocks that aha moment for people. I don't know if that's just it makes it really relatable, I think. So that's kind of my experience. I just want to share that with you all.
Yeah, that was fantastic. Appreciate that, John. And I think that the idea of sharing your story is how you make yourself relatable to your audience. It also is a way for you to make yourself accessible to new people that might follow you or follow your story. So that's why we encourage people to do that, whether it's in text-based format or video format or audio format. But coming up here, even coming up on here on stage and sharing your story, goes a long way to inspiring people in the audience or creating some insight that maybe they will get benefit.
I appreciate that. It's funny. It's funny because I have been fortunate enough to be where I am doing what I'm doing right now and enjoying it. But I've also seen other people I know that have struggled around me as well. Like I have a friend who didn't work for 10 years and he struggled with mental health issues and so forth. And, a lot of the people that I work with daily are, people with a criminal record or people that have, other issues going on in their lives who really feel like society's kind of let them down or they've made a mistake or whatever. And, if I can share a success story like that, a friend of mine who didn't work for 10 years who's now gainfully employed and very happy, I find that gives them inspiration. You know what I mean? And it's not me making up stuff either. It's authentic stuff that's really happened that I've been a part of or I've been around, right? And I think that's really powerful, for sure.
Yeah, no, I agree. I love that, and I'm glad to meet another fellow
Yeah,
trekker.
likewise. Not enough of us around.
Thanks so much for
Yep.
sharing that. Funny, I just went to Comic-Con last week in Toronto, and we had a really good time. My wife dressed up as Captain Pike from Star Trek, so it was
nice.
But let's get back to the conversation. I can talk about Star Trek all day. Michael had his hand up first. Michael, go ahead with your question or comment, and we'll get to everybody else in order.
Hello, thank you. Thank you for the moment. You expressing the battles that you've had with your weight, and I think you also said diabetes. It's amazing when you share things where there may be forms of shame involved in it, can connect you with a client, can connect you with a partner. And I applaud you for doing that. And I really respect people who are willing to go out onto the tightrope where it's uncomfortable, where it maybe doesn't shine the best light on them, but they still move forward anyways. To me, that's a real sign of a leader and a form of bravery. So thank you for that. That's all I wanted to say.
Wow, Michael, thank you so much for that. And I'll tell you another little. I mean, I'm sharing little itty bitty stories here, but a little bitty story. So, I've been a professional speaker now for 17 years, right? Traveled around the world and done thousands of talks. But I remember a talk I did. It was with a pan. It was with a panel with three other really really amazing speakers, and we're in this audience of about 400 people, and most of them are young people. And someone talked about how they had a really, really rough couple of days, and sometimes they feel like giving up in terms of looking for a job or figuring out what they want to do with their life and blah blah blah. And that's what they talked about. But I said, and then I admitted it, and I told them a story about how I still have dark days myself, even though I'm seen as a recognized global speaker. I too have dark days where I spend the whole day and doing nothing, and I'm eating and I'm watching TV and watching Oprah, and all of a sudden it's 4 o'clock. I'm like, oh my god, the entire day's gone by. I feel like a waste of the day. And I just shared with them that every single one of us, no matter who we are and how big we seem, all have dark days. And inspire the other speakers to do the same thing. And all of a sudden, really, wow, this is the first time I ever shared with an audience where I'm a motivational speaker, quote unquote, something about being vulnerable and having a dark day. And I remember that I forget when that was. That was probably in like 2010 or something like that. But it was really a really powerful moment. Made me realize that it's okay to talk about the tough days, and I know it'll inspire some people. Some people resonate, and they realize that we're human. So I think that's an important piece to the story. So thanks for sharing that, and thanks for the kind compliment. I'm grateful. I'm honored. Uh, Next up is Lady Rocket Space. Go ahead with your question or comment. Are you there, Lady Rocket? Okay, if not, no worries. Maybe she stepped aside. Let's
Yes,
go
hello,
to.
hello. Did you?
Okay.
Good
Hi,
morning.
go ahead.
It's a pleasure to join you. It's a busy morning in Los Angeles. So happens that I'm getting ready for the meeting with my PR company, and here's what I would like to ask you a question and two questions, if I may. Well, first one, let me reflect on the Star Trek situation. I have a big event as a Lady Rocket coming up and during the SpaceX Rocket launch, which I am hosting, which includes Roddenberry Foundation, incredible amount of philanthropy and fun. And it's a really exquisite event here at Vandenberg Space Force Base. And yes, Star Trek will be partially celebrated. So you are getting the flow, probably multiplicity of the important points, multiplicity of the message. How to figure out what should be the most compelling leading message when you have so many cool things that you want to communicate, in addition, for example, to the Dark Side of the Moon contest. How do you, because even going to the PR company, you already have to come prepared and do her homework and have like a message almost done. So I would love to hear from you as an expert, both in a sophisticated and emotional way, about that. And the second one, if I can squeeze in, I am also a leading collector of the space NFT art, and I have a platform. I curate artists. There is a new place where your skill is needed, because NFT artists have to describe the lead idea behind their NFTs. They do beautiful job with the art, but the description is very poor. So as the curator, supporter of art, NFT art, I spent a lot of time trying to help them sift the story, which is not my job. I don't have a time for it, but it's so compelling, so important. So just a suggestion. Perhaps there is a big community of the people who could take advantage of your fluency in dealing with the subject, and also your very nice personality, because I think it's very important, especially with artists, to have this sensitivity that you have been demonstrating. I am Lady Rocket. I am done. Thank you.
Thanks for that. I'm gonna go to the second question, which is helping NFT artists. So I actually have a bit of a passion for NFTs. When they were first kind of early last year, I started getting into Twitter Spaces and Clubhouse rooms talking about NFTs and learning about it because I was a newbie. I didn't know what was going on, so I was learning about it. And I actually worked on an NFT with a colleague, and a big part of it was ending stigma around mental health issues. And I was talking about my diabetes, body image issues, and we created an NFT specifically around that. And I think that the storytelling piece is pivotal when it comes to getting
Exactly.
people to invest in your work, because the storytelling piece is, it builds awareness, builds familiarity, and it's shareable. But more importantly, it creates trust. And when you create trust with a potential client, then they're more likely to buy or purchase the NFT or be invested in NFT in a way that you can actually, be compensated for your work and your creativity. So I think that in terms of doing that, that's an important piece to remember. And we talked earlier
May I
today
just
about the
add a tiny bit of information that would be helpful to get your expertise more focused in the NFT area, especially since you just shared that you've dealt with NFTs. Part of my NFT collection, which by the way is going to go to the moon, is focused on Lady Racket Foundation and my philanthropy. And so there is the theme that elevates price visibility of the artist, because I'm including him in my events and taking them to my co-sponsoring brands, frequently luxury brands. So again, there's this multiplicity of the story where I want him to talk about what we are going to accomplish with the money we are going to fundraise using NFTs, because NFTs are beautiful goodwill currency that keeps on giving, and my foundation is using them this way. So again, trust that you mentioned, I think is fantastic, and I will remember that. But secondly, sizzling up the story, because this person is not buying on the NFT, he's giving an opportunity to contribute to what we are doing with funding, space art, space inspiration, space entrepreneurship, space fashion. So how to communicate to the artist that it is not about describing his NFT, it is about what this NFT will do for the rest of us.
Well, let me just share. So my take on this is that one of the challenges with storytelling, particularly when it comes to businesses or art or whatever it might be, is that people try to tell everything in one story. And even with TED Talks, right? Some people who try to pitch a TED Talk, they try to tell their entire life story, all the different elements, the 12 different dimensions of their life story into a TED Talk. And that's actually the wrong way to go. The way to go is actually take all the different elements that you want to talk about and to break them down into simple things. People resonate with simple things. And so, what I would suggest is for anyone who has all these things they want to share about NFT or the art, is to break it down and what are the key stories, what are the key foundations or values you're trying to, and message you're trying to espouse. And each of those becomes a story. And even with each of those, there's multiple stories within that. So, for example, I talk about parenting, but within parenting, there are hundreds of stories I tell. I talk about TEDx talks. Within that, I have dozens of stories that I can tell. I often talk about politics and diversity and inclusion. Within that, there are hundreds of stories I can tell. And so, what I would say is that try not to do everything at once. Try to actually break down what are the key aspects of the story and the NFT art and the business. And then within those, you now have these 5 or 6 or maybe more individual stories that you can tell, because you can't really tell them all at once. And I think that to me would be the first thing. The second thing I want to get to is your first question I wasn't really clear on, so I want to make sure I get it right. But can you please just re-ask what your first
Yes,
question was?
as a founder, an executive, an investor, I hold a responsibility for a quality of my message, and because of what I do, and I direct PR companies, which include writers, and frequently I deliver to them overabundance of very cool facts, like the one that I use as an example, because we have a Star Trek fan in the audience, that on April 8th I will celebrate partially Star Trek during my event at the SpaceX Rocket Launch in Santa Barbara. And there are philanthropic goals, there are artists, there's music. So bottom line, the rules to control multiplicity of the messages, and ability to select the most important one. Of course, simplicity, like you said, is a golden rule, but can you share something more precise and something that would help decision makers like myself find a way to have a key to selection of the importance of the priorities of the message? How about that?
Well, I
Bobby,
mean,
could I jump in after you, please?
yeah, for sure,
I
for
have an
sure,
idea.
for sure. Well, Indra, why don't you go first, and I'll give you my take.
Oh, okay. Thank you, Bobby. Okay, Lady Rocket. I love what you're doing. I was just listening to everything, and the Positivity Vibe Tribe. We have NFTs as well, and so I love what you're doing. And because we are a community, it's about community. So I get your vibe. Basically, when you're talking about storytelling, how I've done it is, and I don't know if this will help you, but I've dedicated different collections, and with each collection, it's telling a story. There's different evolution about the pieces that I'm sharing, that I will be sharing, and putting these collections together. So even each NFT within that collection, there's an overall story. Like, okay, this collection is about XYZ. Then each piece tells a story and the importance and significance of each piece in that collection, and supports the overall topic. So, so with me, it's pretty easy because I have, I talk about mindset, motivation, living a positive life. And then within that, it's broken down into different topics. And, so they have unique artwork, and I'm sure they can also, you know, go into more detail about the story behind the artwork, and particularly when it's in a collection, to gather it all up within a
Yes,
collection.
beautiful. We should talk offline. Just to tell you, last week I launched, like you said, collection called The Dark Side of the Moon, together with Pink Floyd. That was actually a contest to celebrate not only, okay, and here's the example. My contest embraced 50th anniversary of this iconic album, and some of you were sharing here about this psychological challenges, the drama of fighting your own dark side of the moon. So part of the collection, and we got incredible artists, and I announced it during Los Angeles LA NFT event, then Grammys Museum, and then we celebrated ultimately at the Oscars Museum with Scott Page from Pink Floyd. So there is, and we had a dedicated NFTs, like you said, but storytelling became a little bit convoluted because it was Lady Rocket Foundation fundraiser. I was going to use this money for a very interesting purpose, and there was an anniversary, and there was Scott Page, and blah blah blah. But I think what you said, I can use my NFT collections to have sub messages potentially. But anyway, I don't want to take up more of the time. You've gave me a lot of food for thought, NFT for thoughts, and thank you so much. I enjoyed listening to both of you. Oh, and I see Rigel is here, who participated in the competition. Nice to see you, Rigel, and many other friends.
Hi.
Thank you.
Hello, Lady Rocket. Thank you for being yourself and amazing.
Thank you. Thank you.
And Rajel, you're up, so go ahead with your question or comment.
Yes. Thank you for the philanthropic work, Lady Rocket. Anybody who has heard her speak today, I would definitely support her. She is the future. She's actually been working with me quite a bit as well. Thank you so much for taking me under your wing, Lady Rocket. My story is that I am a colon cancer survivor. I also am recently diagnosed with bipolar disorder. So I've been experiencing psychosis episodes the last year and a half, and time traveling and everything that entails. So my focus is also primarily mental health right now. And in where I will begin my story with mental health is, I wrote a postpartum depression prevention / children's book. It's a short book that moms can read with their kids. And I do plan to mint NFTs supporting this cause through Spaceables and at Lady Rocket Space's cause, as she is caring for the earth as much as she is space. So as we care for the earth, we need to care for our women and the people that are birthing our future and birthing our children. A lot of what I was going to ask, actually, you answered my questions through answering Lady Rocket's questions. But yeah, basically, I'm just starting out in Web3, learning about all of the amazing opportunities that are available in this metaverse. And just wondering what kind of advice you might have for someone like me starting out. Scott Page gave me some great advice yesterday, but of course, I want to ask you as well.
Well, I think one of the things that is really important, and I was going to talk about this in regards to the first question that Lady Rocket had asked, which is getting clarity on your brand and who you are, what your purpose and direction is, who that audience is, how you serve them. What are the biggest questions on their mind? What keeps them up at night? What are their pain points? What are their bliss points? When you understand those things, then you can start to create stories that will definitely resonate with those people. And that to me is a very important piece for anyone's journey. I encourage everyone to get started with that. And that's actually a good segue into talking about some of the things I put up in the nest. If you look up in the nest, I'm actually running a free storytelling workshop on April 12th. And it's really designed to help you get clarity into your story, your brand, and ultimately help you figure out how to create a 3 to 5 minute personal branded life story that's going to attract you to the people you want to serve. And so that's what it's all about. So if you want to check that link out, you totally can. And of course, I'm also doing another workshop that's also free on TEDx Talks. If you want to get on the TEDx stage and share your story, you can certainly do that and be part of that conversation. So I'm going to share that one. It was actually going to be this week, but we've postponed it to next week. So that's going to be next week, but the link's there in the nest. You can take a look at that as well. And I'd love for you guys to check that out. But one of the things I will tell people in the workshop is your brand is your story. Your story is your brand. You start with what you're all about, who you serve, right? And from that, the stories will all work themselves out. Now, my brand is about the power of connection. My why statement is there are laws stuck on for leaders. And initially I used it as a business thing, but now I use it as being a dad. I use it as being a son for my parents who are aging. I use it as for my own personal health journey. It relates to all the things that I'm doing and feeling lost or feeling stuck or fulfilled, the mindset issue, the confidence issue, the focus and purpose that I'm trying to do. So for me, I'm able to use those and tell those stories to the different people regarding my journey and hopefully connect with them. So I hope that's helpful. Indra, Melanie, any thoughts on this one?
Yeah, absolutely. First of all, I wanted to say, as somebody who's studied with you in the TEDx, it's amazing. And even though I've had a lot of training as a TV host and public speaking, I feel like it added another whole element to the way that I prepare things and I think about things as far as my thoughts and organization of how to prepare and what's really important. So I would encourage everybody to sign up for Bobby's course. The TEDx course is amazing. And I'm sure your storytelling course will be amazing too. If I can't attend that one, I will definitely be listening to the friends and family replay. So I'm excited to hear about that. I also want to say that something that is really, really encouraged in the Positivity Vibe Tribe spaces that we hold on Wednesdays at 12 p.m. Eastern Standard Time and new time for Thursday with Success Minded, who's here in the space. Shout out to you. On Thursdays at 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time is that we encourage our community to share their stories, to share their experiences, to come forward and to feel comfortable, especially if you haven't spoken before in a space ever before, or you're just nervous about sharing something and not comfortable. They are the spaces that you can come forward and share your stories, and you don't have to be a professional speaker. You don't have to even feel confident about anything. You just have to have the encouragement from the entire tribe to turn up, to show up, and to share your thoughts with us. And Michael's got his hand up, and he's often supporting the Positivity Vibe Tribe and the ambience that we are encouraging everybody going forward to join us, and that it really is a supportive thriving community. So really appreciate all of you that join us. Well, back over to you, Bobby.
Yeah, and I think the importance of community is actually really good a good call. And Melanie and I are actually part of another community called the Thought Leader Branding Club, where we have basically a mastermind of 30 to 40 diverse experts from around the world, and we basically meet up twice a week to talk about our journey, our lives, our brands, and we help support one another to grow and be better. And so I'm a huge believer in that because community is one of those things that help us create more consistency and collaboration and more confidence. And on that note, I didn't actually put this in the tweet nest, but we're actually having our Bring a Friend Day this week. Indra, too, you're welcome. But basically, on Thursday at 4 p.m. and at Friday at 10 a.m., we're actually having our Bring a Friend Day, where once a month we let people come into our community call room to see what it's all about. There's also we do a bit of a mini training and we check in with each other, and you can ask questions and share who you are and pitch your business. So if you want to know more about that, feel free to just ping me or direct DM me, and I can share you the link on how that all works. Melanie, I want to make sure you have a chance to speak. Did you want to share anything? Since
No, I mean, yeah, I've just been listening in. I just want to say to the last speaker, congratulations on being a survivor of colon cancer. That's what my mom passed away from. So I'm definitely,
Thank you.
I feel for you in that journey, and just continue to share.
My mom died of colon cancer when she was my age. I've actually outlived her, and she was waiting for insurance before she pursued treatment. So because of that, her cancer spread to her liver, and it was too late. So this is the first colorectal cancer awareness month nationally. So I do encourage everyone to get your screenings, and it's not embarrassing. It's just part.
Yeah, absolutely. My mom was a big, my mom, for some reason, she always got her screening. She was always on top of it, but she was taking care of my dad during his illness. And that's, speaking of stories, that's how she had lost a bunch of weight. We just thought it was attributed to stress and taking care of my dad, and her not kind of taking care of herself. And the week after we had my dad's ceremony is when we found out she had stage 4 cancer. And
I'm so sorry.
Yeah, and at that point it had spread already. So I mean, we knew she lived longer than she was expected, but it is something that I'm very adamant about. That's something that I do have, and I'll take the advantage here in saying, since then I've been very. I did not have an easy experience. I'm not going to lie. With my first colonoscopy, it was kind of dramatic, and of course, my family is like, only Melanie would have that experience. But I did it. I got it, and I have to have mine more than the average person does, just because of the because of the family. But please, it is not no cancer is kind, but this cancer is particularly very harsh on the body.
And it could be caught so easily if people would receive their screenings, but a lot of people don't get their regular screenings. And I'm advocating as well for, especially with a family history, insurance companies should be covering regular screenings every 3 years, 2 to 3 years for family history instead of 5. And we were so close. I was so close. I was getting my regular screenings as I was an employee of a large healthcare organization for almost 20 years. So I was very aggressive in my treatment. However, a lot of people don't have that. So getting your screenings is important. I was so close to mine spreading. So.
Yeah, well, I'm very grateful that you have survived it. It is a survivable cancer when found early. So, we're speaking of kind of DEI and inclusive, and yes, there's so many insurance, healthcare issues. There's just so many, and even though, I've obviously been affected. My family's been affected by this particular cancer in general, but again, education is the key, folks. And so please, if you're listening, seriously, anybody in your family, just make sure, have the conversation with your wives, your sisters, your brothers, your uncles, whoever is in your life. Have the conversation. Are you up to date on your screenings? And that's top to bottom.
Yes. Yes, and I'm glad that you shared that your first one wasn't simple. I'm not sure how many years ago that was. Do you mind sharing how many years ago that was?
I am just this is something Bobby doesn't even know, but I'm literally like, so what happened was I got extremely dehydrated going, and my family kind of considers me a little bit, when I get sick I get very dramatic. And so I got extremely dehydrated, and so what happened was, before I couldn't go to the restroom to take, you have to, as a woman, you have to take a pregnancy test to confirm, which I wasn't. And I'm like, I'll sign a waiver. It was very dramatic. My screening actually ended up taking pretty much an entire day because I was so dehydrated. They had to get my fluids back up because I got a migraine in the middle of it, and I was getting sick. And yeah, it was very dramatic in that sense. I mean, I got through the first part all on by myself, but I woke up that morning and I was just like, oh my gosh, I just was so dehydrated that it just caused me to get sick, and it pushed my test off. Finally got it done. I was all better. It was, it was just very dramatic. So I'm not necessarily looking forward to it. I'm not going to lie, but the test itself is super duper easy. It's just getting to that point. So, but yeah, so.
Yes, it's very preventable. And I've shared some resources regarding colorectal screenings. The Colorectal Cancer Alliance Association, they reached out to me during my treatments and even provided a buddy for me to talk to. And so I've put up a link that is their link for resources in all 50 states. So thank you so much. And I appreciate your patience with me. I'm still relearning words and things like that from my psychosis experiences. So thank you. I appreciate your patience with my public speaking.
No, you're doing fabulous. No, thank you. And thank you for sharing. So it's truly appreciated.
And this is a great example too of where, when you both share your stories, we're now advocating for a call to action for people to be more mindful of it. And maybe some of the audience is getting this message to, it's hitting them, really hitting home with them. And I think that's really one reason why we talk about storytelling. So I think that's great. And you can take a look at that tweet up above there, along with all the tweets that I put up there, to talk about the things that we're working on. Michael's had his hand up very patiently. Michael, please go ahead with your comment or question.
It's more of a question towards you, Bobby. I would be very interested in seeing you do some form of a podcast on mindful speaking and mindful listening. And you were kind of talking earlier about doing bullet points before you speak, kind of have a roadmap of where you want to be, and things that can be said in 2 minutes can usually be a story. It's when you go on into like 10 minutes, you're not really letting other people get on the dance floor. And I think in a lot of business situations, and I noticed that in meetings, there would be 30 people who wanted to speak, but someone went on for 10 minutes and another person went on for 15, and the meeting was only 30 minutes. I would love for you to do something about mindful speaking and mindful listening, if you're open to that, because I really love your pitch, your cadence, the pace that you use. I've been following you for a while. Thank you.
Yeah, so I think, first off, you are in my podcast right now, Michael. So my podcasts are the audio rooms that I host on Twitter Spaces, on Clubhouse, and on LinkedIn. I've done that specifically. What I do is, when I have these recordings done, I upload them and upload them to a YouTube channel. So I have now a list of all these things that I've done. I've done live streams, I've done podcasts, but I think doing a podcast officially with all the production stuff doesn't really interest me. However, I show up on podcasts. I've been in over 175 podcasts in the last 5-6 years, or 5 to 10 years. Sorry. In regards to the cadence, I mean, the number one rule for any speaker is know your audience, right? So there is a time where you can share a 10-minute story. Like TED Talk is a good example of sharing a 10-minute story that leads to a major point. But if there's only 30 minutes of Q&A and you only have 2 minutes, if there's 30 minutes of Q&A, then your story should be shorter and more succinct. And so it's important to kind of know the difference between, the context of the information of the situation as well as the audience that's there. So I think that's where it becomes very, very important. And then the active listening piece, I think, is another really good thing. Mindful listening is how we get better storytelling because we know our audience because we talk to them and we actively listen to understand them in terms of who they are and where they are and what they're going through. And by doing so, it allows us to become much more efficient and effective storytellers because now we're targeting what we're saying to those people in a manner in which they can appreciate it best. And so that's kind of how, to me, that's where mindful speaking, mindful listening goes a long way. And I do talk a lot about speaking because, well, it's one of the main things I do. And the TEDx Talk event that's coming up next week is part of that. The storytelling workshop is also part of that. And more recently on LinkedIn, I got named a top presentation skills voice, which is because I've been contributing those collaborative AI articles on public speaking, and so that's kind of cool too. But I'm grateful for you being here. Thanks for the kind message, and I'll continue doing this one. We do this room every week on Mondays at 11 a.m. Eastern. There's also rooms that I do on LinkedIn audio on Tuesday at 4 p.m. and Thursdays at 2 p.m. So I'm doing those as well to help get my message out there and also to help people as much as I can. So, Melanie, go ahead.
Yeah, I was also going to say, if Michael too, and this goes for everybody, if you should definitely attend the free webinar Bobby is giving with Thought Leadership Branding Club on storytelling, because having had attended, I get the opportunity not to only attend these webinars, which I continuously learn, but also through our Thought Leadership Branding Club, which is a membership community where we get continuous coaching, and Bobby actually gives amazing coaching and free coaching to our paid members in that group, and so that's another resource that's like a direct resource to Bobby in that regard. So but yeah, definitely come to that workshop as well. So
yeah,
that's like a mini podcast
too. Yeah, exactly. And again, we are having our Bring a Friend Day end of the month. Every end of the month, we have a Bring a Friend Day to our weekly community calls. It's actually this week, Thursday at 4 p.m., Friday at 10 a.m. If any of you want to come to this, I'd love to have you there. Just ping me, ping Melanie, and we can get you the link on how to get started to join us for that. It's about 45 minutes to an hour. We'd love to have you. You can share your thoughts, pitch your business or brand, and get to know a little bit about me and some of the other people that are in the group. So think about that. With that, I want to get to final thoughts because we've been on for like an hour and 45. So let's some final things to keep in mind. If you look at the list above, there's a bunch of links. One for my well, there's a lot of links up there now, but there's a link for my TEDx talk. There's a link for my my storytelling workshop. I don't have a link for there's a link for the LinkedIn local event that's going on as well. So that's another thing that people can look at to help them navigate the different things we're doing. And of course, if you want to be part of the Bring a Friend Day, I encourage you to just let me know and just ping me, and we can have you be part of that conversation. All right. So with that, final thoughts, Indra, go ahead.
Thanks so much, Bobby. And thank you so much to the speakers for joining us and for sharing their stories and for being vulnerable. I think today has just been a wonderful conversation here, and we have run a little bit longer, and I am heading in the car to my first meeting for the day. But I did want to say to all of you, thank you so much for joining us today in this discussion, in this important discussion on storytelling. And everybody has a valuable story. Everybody has a voice. We all have our own unique experience. And I think that's wonderful that we can come in and tell our own story with our own unique energy and share and learn from others as well. So I look forward to everybody joining us in the Positivity Vibe Tribe on Wednesday our space is at 12 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And on Thursday, Success Minded and I are having a wonderful space at 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. So hope to see you all there. And until next time, sending you all love, light, and blessings.
Thanks, Indra. Melanie, how about you?
Yeah, no, this has definitely been a great conversation. We've covered so much. We've talked about so much, but I think the most important thing, if you walk away with anything, is really thinking about just, being open to the idea of sharing your story, being open to that, understanding, and I say this often, but that you do have a voice that, everybody has a voice that needs to be heard with, and sharing your thoughts and ideas. And so don't be afraid to do that. And, and I believe storytelling is much a part of what I do as a career coach. It's such a huge part of what I do as a career coach, in fact. And so that's something that resonates highly with me. And of course, not only here, of course, on Mondays, but on Tuesdays and Thursdays on Clubhouse. You'll find me in the Thought Leadership Branding Club at 6 p.m. Eastern on both days. One room is a career coaching room where you get amazing advice from other career coaches that I get to collaborate with. And then on Thursdays, we talk about LinkedIn 101, becoming a LinkedIn rock star. And you never know, maybe to this week's topic will exactly be on this topic of storytelling. So that's good, a good prompt for us. So, but yeah, no, welcome. I welcome everybody. And yeah, feel free to connect with me.
Yeah, please do follow Indra and Melanie. They're doing some great stuff here on Twitter as well as LinkedIn. And again, thanks to all our guests and our speakers on stage, people in the audience. I do this every week, guys, and I'm pretty prolific on all the different platforms. So feel free to follow me here and on LinkedIn and other Instagram and other platforms as well. But my final message to you is, again, storytelling is the best way for you to break the clutter, to share the human heart, the human experience that will resonate with people, that will relate to them on a fundamental, deep, value-rooted level. That's going to earn you more awareness, familiarity, trust, and even potentially clients or followers or people who take action. And that's why storytelling is so important. And every single one of you has a story. Every single one of you has a story, purpose, and legacy. And if you're willing to invest in understanding who you are and who you want to serve, you can create many powerful stories that'll be part of your legacy and what you're trying to do with your life and your business and career. So with that, invest in storytelling, do it for inclusion, do it for belonging, do it for a way to really help the world. And that's why I'm here to share my story as well. If you want more help from someone like myself in terms of story, presentations, and TEDx talks, things like that, you have the links above, or you can reach out to me anytime. And look forward to seeing some of you at that Bring a Friend Day on Thursday and Friday if you're interested. All the best to you. All the replay, of course, will be available. You can actually, one of the ways for you to bring value to us, this community, as well as your followers, is to take a picture of this right now and put it on LinkedIn or Instagram or Twitter and tag me. Or you can actually take the replay, share your top 3 learnings from that. That'll serve your audience. If you tag me, I'll then see it. I'll then retweet it to my 500,000 followers. Or if you tag me on LinkedIn, I'll comment, and so my 47,000 followers will see it. And that way it's a win-win for all of us, because then we get the message out there about who you are and what you're doing. So hope that makes sense to you. Wish you guys all the best. Have an amazing week. This is day 5 of fasting for me, so I'm a little bit hungry, a little bit tired, a little bit parched, but the talking was starting to get to me. I was like, oh man, I'm talking a lot. So I'm going to take a break now and do a little bit of work, and then I will see you guys next week or in the other events. All the best to you. Thanks, Indra. Thanks, Melanie. See you soon.